So I want to thank everyone for coming today. My name is Elizabeth Goldberg. I'm a science master teacher with UTRGV, University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, at the very bottom of Texas. If you haven't visited us before, and I definitely would recommend coming, it's a beautiful part of Texas to come and see. And tonight's presentation is called How to Not Take Things Personally, or at least try. And that's our goal for today. And the reason why I'm sharing this presentation is because if you are anything like me, everything that happens in the classroom, you take personally. Like my husband dreads course evaluation day because my students can say a million nice things about me. Oh, I loved your class, Professor Goldberg. It was my favorite one. You know, all my teachers should be like you. And then, excuse me, I'll have that one student who just puts one negative thing, and that's all I can focus on. That's it. It just ruins my entire week. I'm like, I'm a failure. They all hate me. I'm going to go live under a bridge. You know, it kind of escalates from there. So if you're anything like me, you take it personally. And there's good reason for that. There is psychological, cultural, and biological reasons why teachers take things personally and have a hard time letting it go. So tonight, our goal is to talk about what those factors are, and then how we can reframe our thinking to try to address it. Not to say that you're not going to get stuck in the negative or take things personally, because you will, because you're human, because you're teachers. But what do we do when we are in that situation, and how can we kind of come out of it in a more positive way? Now, I do intend for this to be an interactive session, so I will be asking you at points to type in the chat or just call out. I'll ask for volunteers, but I might also just randomly call on people as well. So feel free to unmute yourself and mic on or type into the chat. Also, I am not a very formal kind of presentation person. So at any point, if you have a question, you want to type it into the chat or just mic on and ask, I am happy to just let you jump in. This presentation will be available afterwards on, I believe, the UTeach induction and PD website. You can always email me if you'd like a copy as well. My email is at the top corner. With that being said, let's get started. All right, so first thing I want us to do is we're going to do a little mental exercise. So I want you to close your eyes and I want you to picture your favorite teacher. Picture your favorite teacher. Okay. It can be a professor you've had, somebody who taught you in middle school, high school, elementary. It might even be your pre-K teacher. Doesn't matter. Picture your favorite teacher. And I want you to imagine their classroom. What were they doing? Were they giving an amazing lecture? Were they doing a really cool lab? Were they leading a field trip? Were they walking around the room? Were they talking with you? What were they doing in that classroom? What were you doing? How did you feel being in their class? What were the activities, the emotions that made them your favorite teacher? I want you to think about that. What made them such a great teacher? Because we're in a room full of educators right now. So we are in a room full of people who care about teaching. So to be the favorite teacher, well, that's kind of a big deal. So what made them your favorite teacher? Right? Now that we've got that pictured in our head, I'd like somebody to share. So do we have any volunteers? Does anyone want to unmute and share who was your favorite teacher and what made them so special?
Well, I'll go.
Thank you, Pam.
Yeah, my favorite teacher was my high school advanced biology teacher. And one of the reasons she made it, she loved science. She loved teaching, and she always had such a positive energy that she really made you feel like you belong, and she smiled a lot. Her verbal and nonverbal cues were always positive and encouraging. And, at that point, we didn't really talk back when I was in school about safe environments, but you always felt safe. You didn't feel like you were, and a lot of times in the advanced classes, you can feel like you're being challenged and everybody's more competitive. And it didn't feel that way. We all felt like we were a team together, and we did great labs.
Awesome. Thank you, Pam. So many great things that I heard in that. She was warm. There was sort of this very safe environment. She cared about you. You could tell she cared about you. She not only loved the content, but she loved her students, and that really translated into the class. Great, great ideas. We'll take one more. Does one other person want to share who was their favorite teacher and what made them so great?
Yeah, I can share.
Thank you, Eduardo.
So my favorite teacher was my high school physics teacher, Dr. Blas. He made it just like so fun to learn because he had like all these like models for a lot of the things he would teach, and it made it very intuitive. And the way he would come in, you knew that if you had any questions, you could always go up to him and he would explain it in such an easy way for people to understand. And he did so much for me. He encouraged me to do a lot of like extracurricular stuff, like the science fair and going for a lot of these opportunities. And so he's part of the reason why I want to be a teacher now, so I could do that for my students.
Great. And so what I'm hearing from Eduardo was he made the learning fun, so much fun that you like went out of your way. It was like, I already learned this stuff in class. I want to learn outside of class. I want to keep going. I want to do science fair. And so much so that he inspired you to become a teacher. So, really inspirational in the classroom, outside of the classroom, and even in your future career. Excellent. Great. So when we picture our teachers, these are the kind of teachers who we want to be. These inspirational teachers, like your physics teacher, like your biology teacher, like your math teacher, you're like, man, I want to be like that. I want to be like that teacher. That class was amazing. I learned so much. I felt cared for. I felt supportive. I felt inspired. That's the teacher I want to be. And that's great. And that's fantastic. The problem is when we picture and imagine our favorite teachers, I want us to think about what we didn't see. So when you were describing that teacher, you described wonderful things about them. But what are some of the things that maybe were happening in their classroom that with nostalgia we sort of maybe forgot about? So feel free to type into the chat or mic on. What didn't we see happening with our favorite teacher or our favorite class? Okay, I'm gonna have to call on people. It's okay, I'm not shy. All right, I'm gonna go with Esther. Esther, what might be something that we didn't see?
Well, my favorite teacher, I really enjoyed her class because, like other people mentioned, the way, just the energy in the classroom, you could tell that she cared about her students. But I feel like her lessons were very like structured lecture wise. So I think that's something that I would have wanted to see different. That maybe in that time I didn't focus on that, but looking back, I noticed.
Yeah, you're like, wait a minute. Like I really liked her class, but maybe there were other things she could have tried differently that would have been good from a learning standpoint. And I'm checking the chat and I'm seeing preparation, all the preparation that went into those fantastic lectures. The students who were struggling in the class, maybe you were doing amazing and going on and doing these great things and getting A's in the class, but maybe not all the students were. Maybe there were students who were struggling in that class. And I see all the planning, absolutely, all the planning. So what we don't think about when we think about our favorite teachers is we don't think about these other things that are happening in the classroom. Students who didn't turn in their work, students who failed the tests, the parent-teacher conferences, the grading, the lesson planning, and the bad days. Your favorite teacher probably had those too, just like you have those days, but you probably didn't think about that when you were imagining that teacher, when you're imagining that class. And the more years that go by, probably the less and less you thought about that. You probably think of them as sort of this perfect teacher in this perfect class and sort of forget or sort of glaze over maybe some of those imperfections that were happening along the way. This can be an issue. This is what LORTIE calls the apprenticeship of observation. So teaching's kind of a unique field. If I had a child that said, I want to go off and be an astronaut, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer, there's an expectation that in order to do those professions, they're going to need a lot of training, a lot of specialized training, a lot of schooling, a lot of apprenticeship to get there. You're not going to hand somebody who says, oh, I've wanted to be a doctor since I was a kid. When I was a little kid, I was treating my stuffed animals. Here's the scalpel, go do surgery. You're not going to go there. You're going to be like, you need to do many, many years of formal training before we let you be a doctor. You're not going to tell somebody who's like, I've been on airplanes my whole life. I've flown 1 million flights. Okay, you can be the pilot now. You're going to be like, no, we're going to really need you to be trained before you be the pilot. You're not going to say to somebody, oh, I've made little bridge models out of spaghetti and Legos. I can build a bridge now. You're not going to let them do it. But with teaching, because we have been in school for pretty much our entire lives, from preschool for many people all the way up through high school or college, and that entire time they've had teachers. And that entire time they've been watching their teachers. And they've watched good teachers and they've watched bad teachers. And they know what a good teacher looks like. And they know what a bad teacher looks like. And so for a lot of people, they say, look, I've been watching teachers my entire life. I know what it takes to be a good teacher. I know what it takes to be a bad teacher. So I'm ready to be a teacher. And there's sort of this assumption that you don't need specialized training to be a teacher, that because you've watched teachers your entire life, you are ready to do it. You're ready to be a teacher. Go in front of that class. You know what to do. You've been observing them your whole life. You know what makes good teachers. You know what makes bad teachers. You know what it feels like when you have a good teacher. You know what it feels like when you have a bad teacher. So go off and be a teacher because you know what to do because you've seen them your entire life. And then this is where we get some dysfunctional beliefs about teaching. Because what we've been seeing our whole life is the front of the stage. We've been seeing the show, the performance that the teacher has put on. What we're not seeing is the behind the scenes. We're not seeing that back of stage. We're not seeing the planning, the prep, the parent-teacher conferences, the grading, all those things that go into teaching. So when we get into the teaching profession, we're like, this is what it looks like, without actually seeing all the stuff that goes into making that happen. And not only are we not seeing the behind the scenes, but we're also not seeing what the teacher's thinking about. And that is a really dangerous thing. Why? Let me give you an example. Okay, so this is a list of high leverage teaching practices by Deborah Ball from Teaching Works. If you haven't checked out this website, it's really great. There's actually more. There's like 17 of them, but I didn't want to put them all on one slide, so I just picked some of my favorites. But according to Deborah Ball, these are some of the things that great teachers do. So if you want to be a great teacher, we all want to be a great teacher, right? Nobody says we want to go out there and be, I'll be okay. Everyone wants to be a great teacher. Then these are the things that great teachers do. So you can look through the list real fast and you can say, yeah, those are things great teachers do. They have students work in groups. They get into individualized student thinking. They adjust their instruction during a lesson. They talk with the parents. They learn about the students holistically, their culture, their background, their interests. They analyze their instruction and improve it. Yeah, these are all the things that great teachers do. And these are the things that in programs like UTeach, we teach you to do. We're like, you want to be a great teacher? Like, do these things. These are really good things to do. And that's great. And that's awesome. Here's the problem. Let's talk about that first one. Setting up and managing small groups work. If you want to be a great teacher, you need to have opportunities for your students to work in groups. Great teachers have students work in groups. It's one of the things that makes them great. Okay, I don't think anyone here is going to argue with that. All right, so everybody think about that. We know group work, one of the high leverage teaching practices. Okay, so here's my question for you. How do you set up your groups? Somebody want to share, or I'll call on someone? Nicole, that's amazing. I actually was going to call on you if nobody shared. It's like we're sharing the brain. All right, Nicole, unmute yourself. How would you set up your groups?
So one thing I do in some of my classes right now, so I teach at one of the UTeach programs and at FIU. We have all these little math shape things. So sometimes I just give students a shape when they come in the door. And then I might say, okay, all the triangles get together. Or I may say, you can only be in a group, but you can't have the same shape. And
right, so it's kind of random, like, right? It's a randomizer.
yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nicole, for sharing. So Nicole sets up her groups with a randomizer with these shapes. I actually love that idea. That's great. I might steal that. All right. Who else wants to tell me what's a way you set up your groups? I know we're all setting up group work because we're all high leverage teachers. Ana Karen.
So I was gonna also chime in by saying sometimes I separate my groups depending on their performance in class. So let's say a student struggles, and if I see that their buddy, if I see that they're really pretty good friends, but like if their buddy is really good at the concept or the topic that we're teaching at, I can put them together and I can make like a little group. And so depending on the levels where each student is at, that's how I also manage and organize groups as well, depending on their performance on a quiz or whichever topic that we're going through as well.
Okay, excellent. So I'm hearing from you, Ana Karen, that maybe you do like mixed ability grouping. Like you have some students who are sort of high achievers on this specific topic with some who are maybe struggling, and then you group them together so they can sort of support each other. And I'm also seeing in the chat, you can use playing cards instead of the shapes, but kind of the same idea for randomized grouping. Excellent. This is fantastic. So what you're sharing with me is you're actually being very cognizant about how you set up the groups. So here's what I'm going to do right now. And I'm going to share with you, I have an activity. I want the students to work in groups. How many decisions do I have to make? I want you to count. So as I'm talking, you're counting. You got it? We're good? We got it? Okay, here we go. All right. So I want my students to work in groups. The first thing I need to decide is how big are the groups going to be? Do I want groups of 2, or do I want groups of 3, or do I want groups of 4? Do I want groups of 5, or should they be bigger than 5? See, the problem with groups of 2 is it's really great because they can work together, but they're not getting as many ideas as if I have them in a bigger group. But if the group's too big, then I'm going to have students who aren't working, and I don't want that. Also, if I have them in too many small groups, then it's really hard for me to manage because then I have like 15 groups that I have to deal with. But then if I have them in too big groups, then it gets like off task and distracted, so I can deal with more groups. But is it really more effective to have the groups that way? And then I have to think about who's going to be in each group. So like we had before, should I do randomized grouping, or should I do a mixed ability grouping, or should I do the same ability grouping? And what if I have English learners? Should I put them in the same group, or should I put them in different groups? And should they be like helping with other ones who know the same language? Should I have them with different languages? And what if I have that kid who nobody else speaks that language because they're the one kid who speaks like Tongolese in my class, and I have nobody else who can help that kid? And also, what if I have a kid who's taking over the group? Then what should I do in that situation? Or what if I have the kid who never talks in the group? What should I do in that situation? Should I force them all to talk? Should I have roles? What kind of roles should I have? How many roles should I have? And how can I make sure that the groups are being productive? And how am I going to assess the groups? Am I going to talk to each group? Am I going to have them produce a product? Are they going to share with the class when we're done? How long should they be in the group? Should they be in the group for 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 minutes? How much time is too much time, and how much time is too little time? Pause. Okay, who had it? How many decisions was that? I know you're all keeping score at home. 9? That was it? You lost count. Yeah, so here's the thing, that teacher that you're observing, or that teacher that's you, and you have to make one teeny small decision. Group work. I want them to work in groups. That's not a big decision, right? Wrong. That is a huge decision. That one decision is a million decisions. And those million decisions you have to make in real time. Those aren't a million decisions that you make at home when you're making your beautiful 5E lesson plan that you make, in the UTeach program when you teach like 3 lessons in the whole semester. Those are a million decisions you're making in real time that have to vary by student, by class, by period, by subject, by day. And you have to think of all of those things at once. So when you're imagining that great, amazing teacher and they put you into groups, they were not telling you those million little decisions that they had to make about group work. Probably because they weren't even thinking about the million little decisions that come with making group work. Probably a lot of that's instinctual or stuff they've never really thought about. But if you actually pin them down and ask them, how do you make groups? They'd have to be like, wow, yeah, actually, that is a lot of decisions, isn't it? So when we say that we've been observing teachers our entire lives and we know what good teaching is and what it isn't, we are just scratching the very top of the surface of what the teaching profession is. And it is a profession. It is a profession that is composed of a million little decisions on the smallest little activity that we do in our classes every single day. And it is complex and it is integrated and it must be done immediately in real time with real people, which is incredibly difficult. And this is what leads us to our dysfunctional beliefs. So what are dysfunctional beliefs? Dysfunctional beliefs are beliefs that are unrealistic. They typically are rigid, extreme, and generalized. They prevent individuals from showing real performance. They cause extreme emotions, and they remain unchanged with daily experience. Everybody has dysfunctional beliefs, everybody. But unfortunately, teachers tend to have a little bit more than other people, and we'll talk about that in a second. But before we do, brainstorm. What might be some dysfunctional beliefs you or others, teachers or people outside the teaching profession, might have about teaching? Let's go to the chat, and then I might call on a few people. What are some dysfunctional beliefs you think you, people inside the teaching profession and people outside the teaching profession might have about teaching? Things that aren't quite true. Teachers have a lot of time off to plan and be prepared for classes. If I have to hear one more person say, well, at least you get the summers off, I'm like, no. Teaching is one size fits all. Teaching is easy. Yeah, teaching is easy is only said by people who don't teach, pretty sure. Exactly, I agree. Teachers are glorified babysitters. Oh, Eduardo, that cuts to the heart. Actually, somebody calculated if teachers were paid like babysitters, we would be paid like 3 times as much. So I'm like, man, we're doing it wrong. People are natural born teachers. Nicole, hold on to that thought. We're going to get to that one in just a second. All right. Excellent. Yes, these are absolutely dysfunctional beliefs that people have about teaching. And unfortunately, teaching and education is one of those professions that actually has one of the highest number of dysfunctional beliefs. Students who are in education, communication, medicine, and theology tracks have significantly higher and stronger dysfunctional beliefs, particularly about practitioner perfection. What does that mean? That I have to be perfect. You can't just be an okay teacher. You have to be a great teacher. You have to be the best teacher. You have to be a perfect teacher. Maybe this exists in other professions, but you just don't tend to see that as much in, say, plumbing. There's just not that same intensity of you must be the best plumber or you have failed. But that's definitely what a lot of teachers think when they go into or when they are practicing teaching. So why do we think this is the case? Why is teaching one of these professions, along with theology and medicine and communication, where we are so hard on ourselves, where we have these dysfunctional beliefs and we think that we have to be perfect? Who wants to share? Okay. Yeah, Nicole, you're mentioning that these are largely caregiving professions. You are correct. Why is that important in your mind?
I kind of make the parallel to parenting. So the same way your parents don't have a favorite child, you're not supposed to have a favorite patient or a favorite student. So you kind of, it's something where you are often put in the position of you're dealing with a diverse body of people, but there's kind of the expectation that not only will you treat people equally, but you will be, if you will, kind, which I mean, you don't want people, you don't want a mean doctor or anything else, but the idea that you're kind of, I guess the best way to put it is you see people at their best and their worst on a regular basis, and you're still always giving 100%.
You have to give 100%. You have to be kind. And even if the person's not kind to you, you have to display that care.
So kind of like parenting, you have to like your kid when they're throwing a tantrum just as well as when they're like, here, mommy, or here, daddy. So
Yes,
you
you
kind of
can't.
are supposed to deal with it either way.
Yeah, you can't just be like, all right, I'm done. I quit. You know, you have to keep going and keep loving that child no matter what. And, you know, parenting is absolutely, again, where we suffer from the apprenticeship of observation. We've seen people parent our whole lives. So we assume we know what goes into parenting. And I could give you a whole nother lecture about that, but we'll stick to the teaching for today. Deanna, do you mind sharing? Do you mind unmuting and sharing what you think teaching in particular and maybe these other professions have in common, where we see this sort of expectation of practitioner perfection?
Well, you generally, it's not good to have a bad day as a teacher, right? You're supposed to always be smiling and always make the right choice, and a litany of different choices you could make. And when a student's late to your class for the 10th time, and that's the time that they're supposed to be written up, you're still supposed to smile. And, it's almost like you can't be a real person sometimes. You've just got to be perfect. You always have to be, one step ahead, or maybe just in a way that's always supportive of other people, whether they're supportive of you or not. It's not always a level playing field.
Yeah, great. And you're sort of echoing what Nicole said. You always have to be the best version of yourself, right? You're not allowed to have a temper tantrum. You're not allowed to get mad. You're not allowed to mess up. There's this real big expectation that you are going to be perfect every single day. You're going to come prepared. You're going to come happy. You're going to just let it roll with the punches. And I love what you said, you can't be a real person, because real people, that's not how they behave. You have to put a facade on. I used to tell my students all the time, I'm not actually a teacher, I just play one on television. You have to put this facade on every day of the teacher, the role of the teacher versus who you really are inside, because you have to sort of keep some of that hidden. Eduardo, I feel like you want to jump in here. Want to jump in here a little bit and share a little more?
Oh, I had just gotten back from the bathroom. I'm sorry.
That's okay, but feel free to jump in. Why do you think teachers feel like they have to be perfect?
I think it's this idea, like everybody who wants to be a teacher, or maybe I'm just talking for myself, but like this idea that we want to be perfect, we want to bring up the future generations or something, and like we put so much pressure on ourselves, and we want to be, perfect because of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and because the stakes are so high. Because if you mess it up, there's this attitude that you screwed up that child for life. Like you scarred them for life, and now, instead of them being the next Nobel Prize winning nuclear physicist, they're going to go into pole dancing because you yelled at them that one day because you were having a bad day and they didn't turn in their homework for the 30th time. There you go. You just ruined that child's life forever. There's sort of that expectation. The stakes are so high, kind of the same with medicine. The stakes are so high. We don't allow ourselves to make mistakes. We have to be perfect. Exactly. Thank you so much. I'm reading in the chat. So this sort of culturally is one of the reasons why we take everything personally as teachers, because culturally we are receiving this message that everyone knows how to teach and we can only have great teachers. and you need to be one. And if you're not, you're sort of this failure. And so this is a huge dysfunctional belief we have as a society and as a culture. But it's not the only one. So let's look at some others, which are so fun. So this is one of my favorites, and somebody already mentioned it in the chat. Oh, I think it was Nicole. Thank you, Nicole. And I want everyone to think about this one for a second. Are teachers born or are teachers made? Vote in the chat. Are teachers born or are teachers made? I will be calling on someone. Vote in the chat. Are teachers born or are teachers made? Okay, please correct me if I mispronounce this. Oh, for those of you who can't see the chat, everyone's typing in made. I won't tell you if that's the right answer, but you probably will figure it out pretty soon. Is it Abria?
Correct.
Thank you. Can you please, you put an exclamation, so it feels like you feel pretty strongly about this. Why do you feel like teachers are made, not born?
Well, I believe we're born with certain dispositions, you know, and they develop over time. But we have to take those dispositions and kind of craft them in a way to kind of ensure that, you know, we're meeting the student preferences, we are supporting all learners, and goes back to our dysfunctional beliefs. People have this perception of what teachers are, but it takes some cultivating to ensure that we're providing the best opportunities for all of the students. So that's why I think you got to do some work to make a teacher.
Absolutely. I love what you said there. There's dispositions, right? There are definitely dispositions that are helpful in the teaching profession, but they have to be cultivated. You know, you can be this really engaging, exciting person and love your students, but if you don't know how to make group work, I don't care how engaging and exciting you are, that those groups may fail, because we talked about the million decisions that go into group work. If you're just this really energetic and exciting person, that doesn't mean you know how to do group work. That doesn't mean you know how to lesson plan, kind of thing. Does anyone else want to share? Are teachers born or are teachers made?
Say, you know, we all have skills for teaching. I mean, like the next generation. I think that's just innate, I think, in people in general. But I mean, the skill sets that you have in nurturing someone is very different than what you need for somebody who one day you're hoping to be a surgeon, or was one day to be, you know, I mean, every day can't be recess. So there's a very different skill set in trying to put a large conglomerate of children together and to put all these individuals together and hopefully actually help every one of them be successful. So there's a lot of strategies in that one or two children maybe at a time. You know, you might argue that you might have the natural ability to be comfortable with that, and even then needing training. But in education, we're teaching mass numbers of people, which in itself is a very different situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Like those high leverage practices that Deborah Ball that I showed you, those came out of the idea where she said, we cannot wait for perfect teachers. Because if we wait for perfect teachers, we will have no teachers. We need to wait for imperfect people, AKA people who want to be teachers, and then we need to train them to become teachers. And that's really her methodology for creating those high leverage practices. She studied, you know, for years what these teachers did, and she said, if we can teach people to do these things, we can make them into really good teachers. Not perfect teachers, but that doesn't exist, but good teachers, and even people who they themselves may not be good teachers when they first enter the profession. So here's the thing about, are teachers born or made? I hear this all the time when you interview people who want to go into the teaching profession. I was born to be a teacher. Guilty. You know, they're the people who are like, when I was little, I would line up my teddy bears and I would teach them. And I've just always wanted to be a teacher. And I always taught my friends, my sibling. And that was like totally me. I went overboard and I like created bus schedules. And I like gave backstories to my teddy bears and be like, oh, I'm sorry, you know, Miss Fluffins is going to be absent on Tuesday because she has a dentist appointment. You know, like maybe a little too much. But that was totally me. Like I was born to be a teacher. But here's the issue with that. If we have people going into the profession who say, I was born to be a teacher. That's wonderful. That's great. And they might actually be really great teachers. They might have the dispositions, like we talked about, for great teaching. They might make connections with the students, have exciting lessons, really engage them, get them to learn, do all these things that are really great. The problem is, because they are people dealing with people, not every day is going to be sunshine and rainbows. There are going to be days where they get yelled at by a parent. There are going to be days where they have a student who doesn't want to do the assignment. There are going to be days where, even though they worked so hard and reviewed and practiced and covered everything on the test, you get the test grades back and they all failed. Yeah, I see the head nods. You're like, I know, right? We did it. We literally went through every question and they still failed. So here's the problem with that. If you were born to be a teacher, that works on the good days. But what message are you going to get on the bad days? If that student doesn't learn, if you mess up that lesson, if you tank that, your students take that test, were you born to be a teacher? What are we left to think? I guess I wasn't. I guess I was wrong. I guess I wasn't born to be a teacher, because if I was born to be a teacher, my students would be passing every test. Every lesson would be great. No student would be putting their head down in class or on their cell phone when I'm trying to teach. So I guess I wasn't born to be a teacher. I guess I was wrong. And that's the danger of this dysfunctional belief. If you believe you were born to be a teacher, that's great if it all works out. But when it doesn't, and it will, because inevitably it will, what are you left to think? And so this is where dysfunctional beliefs can be incredibly dangerous. But the good news is we can reframe them. So I want everybody to take a second and think about, instead of saying to somebody, you were born to be a teacher, which sounds like a compliment, but can actually be a very dangerous thing. What would be the reframe? What would be the reframe? Oh, Diana, I love that. I love the challenge of teaching. Fantastic. We're human. We're born to experience, reflect, and grow. That is beautiful. These are fantastic. Any others? Any others? What could be a reframe? Instead of saying I was born to be a teacher, which leaves us pretty much no room for imperfection. What could be a reframe that not only allows for imperfection, but appreciates imperfection? Let's see if we can get one more. I am interested and willing to grow and learn. Fantastic. Teaching is a dynamic career that is always adjusting as other factors change in society and research, etc. Perfect, exactly. I love what you're sharing here. And so here I have another list of dysfunctional beliefs that maybe you've heard about. All you need to be a great teacher is caring about your students. This is literally the plot of every teacher movie. Like every teacher movie out there, it's like you go in and the kids are all, totally disengaged, and they come from broken home lives and they hate algebra. You go in there, and if you just care about them, if you just love them, all of a sudden they will get algebra. Yeah, no, I can't stand those movies, because it's like, that's not it. Like, it's important to love your students. It's important to love the teaching profession, but love is all you need is love is not the answer. That's not going to make them know algebra. Like, it's important, but there's a little bit more to them learning algebra than just love your students. Everyone else knows what they're doing. This is a classic one, especially for early career teachers, novice teachers. So we have a few student teachers in the group today. You're going to feel this every single day. Everyone else knows what they're doing except for me. The reality is, most of us don't know what we're doing. We're making it up as we go along. And the ones who do know what they're doing, it's because they have failed so many times that they figured out what actually works. Students didn't turn in their work because they're lazy. Yeah, guilty. I've felt that too. We're going to talk about that one in just a second. Parents don't care about their kids doing well in school. That's why, you know, I call the parents, they just don't care. They don't answer the phone. They don't want their kids to do well. If I make a mistake, the students will lose respect for me. And this is one a lot of early career teachers fear, that they can't make mistakes or that they'll lose the respect of their students. Don't smile till Christmas. Who's heard that one? Yeah, don't smile till Christmas, right? You got to be mean. You got to be mean. Get the respect. Then you can be nice to them, like when half the year is over. I need to be like my favorite teacher. I need to be a perfect teacher. Talked a little bit about that one. And also just focus on the content. That was one that I used to do a lot. Just focus on the content. Don't focus on the kids. Don't focus on the relationships. Just focus on the science. Just focus on the math and you'll be fine. Right? So these are typical dysfunctional beliefs that teachers have. I definitely have some of them. Maybe you've had some of them as well. And so what we're going to do right now is we're going to talk about when you have these dysfunctional beliefs, because I'm not going to say if you have these dysfunctional beliefs. We all have dysfunctional beliefs. When you have these dysfunctional beliefs, what we're going to talk about now is how to reframe them. So in order to do this, we're going to do a little activity. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a classroom, but for only 5 seconds, like 5 seconds, and then I'm going to pull it away. So you've got to watch it real fast and just go with your gut, like gut instinct. What's going on in the classroom? Look at the students, look at what's happening. Gut instinct, no time to think. Are we ready? On your mark, get set, go. Okay, time's up. What did you see? What did you see? All right, Lydia, can you unmute yourself? What did you see? Was it too fast?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. But I saw that some students were like, some looked bored, some looked confused, some looked like exhausted, and then others were participating. So it was like a mixture of feelings from the students.
So some were confused, some were bored, some were exhausted, some were participating. Savannah, can you unmute yourself? What did you see?
I assumed they were listening to a lecture because they were like looking in the front of the classroom.
Okay,
and then
so
there were
and
then there were like some students raising their hands, like looking like they were about to answer a question.
Okay, so maybe there was a lecture going on and some kind of are focused and some want to answer and maybe some don't. Okay, so now what we're going to do for this reframing activity is we're going to think about what was an assumption and what was objective. So what are some assumptions we can make about these students just looking at this picture? What are some assumptions that we might have about them? Okay, that they're bored, they're rolling their eyes, they're confused. Okay, maybe the ones in the back are the smart kids because they have their hands up. So maybe those are the smart kids back there. Right, what's objective? What is actually, without making any assumptions, can we say about this class or these students? They are teenagers. Okay, that's objective. That seems fair. Well, we'll say that's true. It's a full class. Absolutely. It is a full class. Every seat seems to be filled. It is a diverse class. Okay, very good. We have a diverse set of students. They have a book. We don't know what they're doing with the book or not doing with the book, but there are books present. It seems like every student has a book. We can't really see the ones in the back. This one might have a computer. It's hard to say. All right. So these are assumptions versus objective. So when we have these dysfunctional beliefs, the first thing to try to do is practice non-judgmental thinking. So in non-judgmental thinking, what we do is we describe what happens in as objective a way as possible, taking out the assumptions, taking out the emotion. And then once we have actually described the situation, we come up with alternative hypotheses. When I say alternative hypotheses, I'm talking many hypotheses, not one, not two. Keep going. Keep coming up with different explanations. And if possible, test those explanations, one or two, and objectively evaluate the results. So what do I mean by this? So there's a great video of this by Kay DeBoer, where he talks about reframing your thinking. So let's say you have a student who comes into your class and you say, all right, can you grab out your homework? And the student doesn't have his homework. And you say, you forgot your homework again? And the student screams at you and says, homework is stupid, this class is stupid, throws the backpack and puts his head on the desk. Okay, that's a pretty serious kind of situation going on in your room. Now, what are the assumptions that you might make about this student? They're frustrated. The student hates you, right? They hate me, they hate math. The student has no respect for the teacher. Absolutely. Okay, so these are all assumptions we can make about the student. The student hates you, the student hates your class, the student hates your subject, they have no respect for you, all this stuff. Now what I want you to do is think about it, all the alternative hypotheses. So yes, they may hate you. They may hate your class. They may hate algebra. But give me at least 5 other reasons why this might have happened in your classroom. Okay, so Diana's saying they have their, having the homework is under their control. Diana, can you unmute yourself and elaborate on that? It sounds like you got an alternative hypothesis for us.
Oh, well, it may be that they did their homework, but maybe they were staying at one parent's house over a different parent's house, and they had to grab their clothes in a hurry because maybe there was an issue with their parents who are separated, and maybe their homework is sitting at one house and they came from the other house or something. Maybe they really did it for real, and maybe something happened that was beyond their control. But maybe when you said you don't have your homework again, that was enough to trigger an emotional reaction, because maybe both times they had that situation happen and they're having a really difficult time getting it together.
Absolutely, right? That could be an alternative hypothesis, that maybe they did their homework, but it got lost somewhere. And so that was sort of a triggering event when you said you don't have it again, because they felt that that was a little bit unfair since they actually did their homework. Eduardo's adding into the chat, they're having a bad day and just snapped. Or Ana Karen added, they always struggle with this subject. This is a really hard subject for them. And so maybe not being able to do the homework is sort of a sore subject for them. So in this video, we don't have time to watch it right now. It's a really great TED Talk. He kind of goes through the day of that student. And that student, the parents are getting a divorce and they're fighting into the night, and he doesn't get a good night's sleep. And then because he doesn't get a good night's sleep, he oversleeps his alarm, and his mom yells at him, hey, you're going to miss the bus. And so he has to run out the room, and he doesn't get breakfast, and he realizes he left his lunch on the bus, and he's getting to your class and he's trying to pull out his homework, and he realizes that he left it at home. And then you tell him, oh, you don't have your homework again, and he snaps. There was a million other things that happened in that child's life before they got to you. And 9 times out of 10, that is actually the case, that what they are mad about is probably not you. What they are mad about is probably something that happened before you. They broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend. They're having some issues with their parents. A different teacher yelled at them for not having their homework in class. And now you're the 3rd teacher who's yelled at them for not having their homework in class. Whatever the case may be, it's sort of reframing this idea of what's wrong with the student to asking what happened to this student. And so coming up with these alternative hypotheses allow you to think about all the different ones. And maybe the correct one is they just hate you and hate algebra and hate your class. But maybe it's one of these other ones. And the thing is, give yourself the opportunity to think about that. Give yourself the opportunity to think about all the different reasons why this might be happening, in your class. And if possible, test one of those reasons and see if you were right. So in this case, if we have the student who says, this class is stupid, homework is stupid, puts their head down on the desk, how could we test this? How could we test one of our alternative hypotheses? Let's see.
You can just just calmly have a conversation with them and ask them what's wrong.
Ask them what's wrong.
Through anything.
There you go. There you go. And if they say, "Oh, it's because I hate you," well, they look, the first one was correct, the first assumption. But maybe they'll say one of these other things. What are these other hypotheses that we were talking about? They're up all night working. Nicole put they were up all night working, and they, didn't have time to do their homework. Or maybe they had a big project that's worth 30% of their grade in one class. Your little homework assignment is just a pass-fail thing that's worth none of their grade, a small fraction. And honestly, that's a good student. That's a student who's thinking correctly. Hey, I should focus on the thing that's worth a big chunk of my grade for this class versus this little one that's not worth a lot, because I only have so much time in my day to get everything done. So allowing yourself to have that opportunity can help you break some of this dysfunctional thinking. We don't have time for this one. This is another example. Students are lazy. That's why they don't do their homework. But what I do want to talk about, because we're running low on time and I want to respect your time, is we don't have time to watch this. It's about a 9-minute video. It's a TED Talk by Allison Ledgerwood. And what I'm talking about with you right now, calmly at almost 7 o'clock at night on a Monday, Central Time, is really hard to do in real life. Really hard to do in real life, this non-judgmental thinking. And this is why. We talked about cultural reasons why teachers have dysfunctional beliefs and societal reasons why teachers have dysfunctional beliefs, but there's also biological reasons why you have these dysfunctional beliefs and why it's so hard to let things go that happen in the classroom. Because biologically, we are wired to focus on the negative. When we are presented with positive information and presented with negative information, we hold on to the negative, and we can reframe a positive event into a negative one, but it takes our brains about twice as long to reframe a negative event back into a positive one. We are not good at this biologically. This takes time. This takes practice. So if you are holding on to all the negative things that happen in your classroom, biologically, that is what you are programmed to do. But that does not have to be your fate. Because just like our brains are tooled to think negatively, we can retool them to take a more positive spin. And so how do we do that? By focusing on the positive. It's not easy. I'm not going to say it's easy. Things that are worthwhile seldom are. But in that day where you had the student who wouldn't give their cell phone to you, or put their head on the desk, or didn't turn in their homework, or you had the parent that yelled at you, you can absolutely focus on all the things that went wrong. But you could also focus on some of the things that went right. Remember those million decisions that went into choosing groups? I bet you made some of those correctly. So let yourself think about that. Let yourself think about, hey, you know what? Groups of 4. That was a good call. That worked really well. That randomization tool, I really liked that. That actually was a great way to make the groups. I'm going to try that again next time. Yeah, I had that student who wouldn't give me their cell phone, and they were playing with it all day in class. But I also had that other student who said, oh, it makes sense now. What did I do there? What did I do in that situation that made that student click? Let me keep that. Let me keep that. Because here's the thing. When we focus on all the things we do wrong, we don't actually tend to improve very much. But when we focus on the things we do right, it not only makes us happier, it makes us better teachers, because then we can use the things that we do right to keep getting better and better every single day. So here are some tools for you. Go to non-judgmental thinking. Take out the emotion. Take out the assumptions and just be objective. Think about what happened Give yourself alternative hypotheses and test those hypotheses. See if you are right. See if maybe it's something else going on. Develop a mantra. Remember how we talked about reframing those dysfunctional beliefs? And whenever you feel like you're having one, which you will, have a mantra to help you break it. Something like failure helps you grow, or being imperfect makes me human, or I don't have to be a perfect teacher, I just have to be a teacher. Things like that that you can stick to, rely on when you get into that negative mindset. Keep the good, both physically and mentally. Keep a folder, an electronic folder, a physical folder of the lessons where students rocked it, or they sent you little notes that said you were their favorite teacher. You will need those. You need to keep the good to help you get through the bad. So hold on to them. When someone pays you a compliment, write it down and have a folder, a journal, a file of good, and look at it often to remind you of the times you got it right, not just the times that you got it wrong. I know it sounds very cliche at this point. Practice self-care, you're hearing that a lot, but it's true. Can't pour from a cup that's empty. So, take care of yourself physically and mentally, emotionally. Also, give people the benefit of the doubt. Think about all the times that somebody assumed something about you that was unkind. Try not to do that for others. It will not only help you have a better relationship, but it'll also help you just feel better, giving people the benefit of the doubt. Thinking your students are lazy doesn't make you feel good. But thinking, you know what, they missed this assignment, they told me, they just couldn't get it done. All right, here's the beautiful thing. Tomorrow is another day. I'll give them another day and another assignment. That is the beautiful thing about teaching. Every day you get to start anew. So if yesterday was bad, you get another day tomorrow. But in that process, forgive yourself and others. You are going to mess up. You know what that makes you? Human. That makes you perfectly human. So you will mess up, your students will mess up, your peers will mess up, the parents you work with will mess up. Forgive yourself, forgive them, and just keep focusing on that's what makes us human. And we can just keep trying our best, keep trying to do better each day. And also ask for help. So the wonderful thing about this community you have here, we have master teachers, peers, students, professional development, all of these people can help you because teaching is an incredibly complex field, profession, like we talked about before, and nobody knows how to do it. The apprenticeship of observation, you think you've seen it all, you think you know it all. The reality is nobody does. So seek out others, seek help, and they can help you focus on the good and focus on the things you're doing well so you can hold on to those for your teaching. All right, that pretty much does it for me. We are at, oh my goodness, 7:03, I'm sorry. I want to thank you all for coming today, listening to my presentation. I want you to have a great semester. It won't be great every day, but if you could be just a little bit happier tomorrow than you were today, I'm okay with that. That's all I want. So thank you everybody for coming. I really appreciate you being here.